Hi, welcome back. In this segment, we're going to do Reconstruction number 5, which is another of the argument reconstruction exercises. As you'll recall, we're working with the Australian case, the Queen versus David Harold Eastman. That decision can be found here, and this is a link to an article that describes some of the key facts in the case. And in this case, the highest-ranking police officer in Australia to be murdered, Assistant Commissioner Colin Winchester, was shot twice in the head at point-blank range as he was stepping from his car outside his Deakin home in the ACT at about 9:15 p.m. on January 10, 1989. And as we've done from the past, from Andrew Palmer's excellent book, Proof: How to Analyze Evidence in Preparation for Trial, we've taken a line of what's been called here reasons that lead to this contention. And we're going to reconstruct this into a way that makes the flow of the certainty obvious to the audience. So we create our tray, as we've done in the past. We put the components of the original argument that we're going to be working with, and we set up a blank logic bridge. And the first thing we do is we take our what's called a contention here, which is the conclusion. And the conclusion is Eastman was the man who purchased the Clarenbeck rifle on or about 31 December 1989. Separate that into subject and predicate phrase right here. Eastman, in our predicate phrase, was the man who purchased the Clarenbeck rifle on or about 31 December 1989. Then we look at each of the sentences here, and we've moved them over so that we can restructure them in a way that would fit into a line of reasoning that begins with the word Eastman. Well, of course, we don't see Eastman anywhere here in this first one, so we're just going to move that straight over. But here we see Eastman already had a telescopic sight, so we move the predicate over, knowing that it's going to connect here. Had already a telescopic sight. Same thing, we see Eastman here, so we can move over, kept the telescopic sight from the Bradshaw rifle. And we have here Eastman returned to Bradshaw the Sterling rifle without returning the telescopic scope the same day he had purchased them for him. We move the subject phrase into our conclusion on the template, and our predicate phrase of the conclusion here as well. Then, as always, we separate the subject and the predicate phrase. The subject phrase goes at the start of our first premise. The predicate phrase is the end, the finish of whatever our last premise will be. We might have more than 4 premises, we might have less, but this is kind of a placeholder that shows you the separation that's going to need to be filled. If we need more premises, then we start over and pick a blank with more than 4 premises. So, we start with testing which of the components or predicates, which seems to be the logical order in which the stepping stones would run here. So we try out this one. And the reconstruction can be a process of trial and error until you get the order right of the predicates that make logical sense. So here we have Eastman returned to Bradshaw the Sterling rifle without returning the telescopic sight the same day he had purchased them for him. And then we've moved the next one, kept the telescopic sight from the Bradshaw rifle. And finally, had already a telescopic sight. And again, we've moved the predicate of one premise into the place of the subject of the next premise. So now we can see if this ordering of these predicates makes sense. And here we have premise 1, and if not, we can just move them around until we find the right order. Here premise 1 is Eastman returned to Bradshaw the Sterling rifle without returning the telescopic sight the same day he had purchased them from him. Premise number 2, one who returned to Bradshaw the Sterling rifle without returning the telescopic sight the same day he had purchased them from him, kept the telescopic sight from the Bradshaw rifle. Premise 3, one who kept the telescopic sight from the Bradshaw rifle had already a telescopic sight. And premise 4, one who had already a telescopic sight was the man who purchased the Clarenbeck rifle on or about 31 December 1989. So our conclusion, so Eastman was the man who purchased the Clarenbeck rifle on or about 31 December 1989. Well, now we see we have one more piece from the original argument, and of course we're going to be looking for what assumptions might be needed. And here we can see that it fits right here as an assumption supporting premise number 4. Premise 4 is one who had already a telescopic sight was the man who purchased the Clarenbeck rifle on or about 31 December 1989. Well, the assumption that is a fact that would need to be shown is the purchaser of the Clarenbeck already had a telescopic sight. So this is a way of lining up your premises in a logical order in which the flow of certainty can be obvious. Remember, we're not saying this case, as you read, was supported by circumstantial evidence. So we're not saying here that you should believe the truth of any one of these premises, whether they're true, absolutely true, false, or the jury might have, or the judge might have thought 50% true. What we're working on in Reconstruction is lining up the components of the original argument in a fashion in which the logical connections are clearly made. Thank you.